Alright, the purpose of this video is to demonstrate how to photograph the moon with a basic DSLR camera. Perhaps you got one for Christmas, perhaps your friend loans you one, perhaps you became interested in photography. If you are a professional photographer, you probably already know how to do this, and if you don't, you can also learn from this as well, but you might want to skip through some of the introductory parts. So, for the purpose of this video, you will need to have a basic digital single lens reflex camera. Well, this guy is not actually a DSLR. I'm using that to take the video, which makes it sort of difficult to show the camera in the video. So I'm instead taking this old film camera here, which is very similar to a lot of the modern designs. By the way, this used to be a good one. Remember the Elan 2E? Very good camera. I will be using another camera when I show the settings on the DSLR in just a few minutes, because that's kind of required. Most of these, when you buy them from the store, will come with like a medium powered zoom lens like this. 50 millimeters is about what the human eye sees. Millimeters refer, by the way, to the focal length, which is how much magnification you have. The simplest way to explain it. Basically put anything that's greater than 50 is telephoto. Anything that's less than 50 is wide angle. So most people come with a basic telephoto and wide angle lens like this. Sometimes you got a deal that came with something more like this, 75 to 300 millimeters. It gives you a certain additional amount of magnification. You want something like this if you're going to photograph the moon, at least something that's going to be at 200-300 millimeters of focal length or better. You can buy these cheap lenses like this guy, but they're very tempting to a lot of people because they're like about $100 and they give you 500 millimeters of focal length. And then you can buy an extender that screws on the end that gives you twice that at the very end. These are a lot of times attacked by photographers because they have poor optical quality and they're cheap. But at the same time, if you're just trying to get photos of the moon, this isn't actually that bad. I've photographed some pretty good stuff with this lens. In fact, let me show you some of the photos I've taken with this lens. Alright, so let's go over the settings that you will use, and then we're going to connect these up and use them. You can, by the way, have imagers like this. You can buy these that plug into your computer, hook onto a telescope, and allow you to photograph things like the moon, but we're not covering them in this because if you buy them, they come with an instruction manual that shows you how to do that. You can also go out and buy T-ring and a T-adapter, which screw like this, and then they connect to the front. They actually connect to the front of the camera, much as this lens connects, see? And once you do this, then your camera can now connect to, if I can get this on right, where does that connect? Here it is. Then your camera can connect to a telescope. So we'll cover both of these sorts of connections. So to start with, let's look at the settings that you will need. Alright, so this is a basic DSLR. This is a Canon Rebel T. It's not the most advanced camera in the world, it's not the most expensive camera in the world, but it's not a bad camera in the world. I've been a Canon guy for years, so I like Canons. Nikons are good too, by the way, too. I'm not to knock Nikons or anything like that. So let me show you the basic settings you'd use. I mean, this is not to cover the usage of the Canon. I'm assuming you know how to use your camera, like how to cut it on, how to cut it off, and you can switch through all the little modes that allow you to know the different types of pictures that you're taking. What you're going to want to do for this is select M. That is manual. And the reason is you want absolute marshal control of your camera. You do not want anything to be in the camera's control. Alright, first thing on the menu. Let's select our display. Let's cut it on. Yeah, I'm going to show you how to use it. And I'm going to start by not actually cutting it on. Now let me do this though. Let me crank up the LCD brightness a little bit for you. Oops. Because there's a possibility that you guys might not be able to see it too well. Alright, so looking at this, first thing we're going to do is change the ISO. ISO, you see this little thing here? This is ISO. What that basically refers to is the sensitivity, the gain on the film. Now, there's no real film in this, but in the olden days, high numbers meant that the film could be exposed more quickly to light. It would take less light to expose it. So a lot of people think they want to go high, 16, 3200, 6400 to get the moon, right? Because it's dark. And that makes sense, right? You'd want to have high, but you don't want high. You want low. 100, 200 are the numbers you want to work in because the moon is extremely bright. Everything else is dark, but the moon's bright. So you want to treat it very, 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 like a very, very bright object. So you want to go like an ISO of 1 or 200. Okay, next thing you want to do, you want to adjust the f-stop. Now see the f-stop right here, adjust your screen here. The f-stop refers to this. Let me open the camera up. Well, I'll show you with another lens that I already have right here. If you look inside the lens, there's a certain amount of light that goes through it. I don't know if you can see it or not. There's actually a little aperture inside here. You probably can't see it in the lens at all. And then this little aperture opens and closes to let light in. The more open it is, the lower your f-stop number. The more closed it is, the higher your f-stop number. The f-stop, in case you're like one of those people that wants to know not just kind of how it works, but really what it means, the f-stop is basically the dividing the focal length into the aperture width. So if you had let's see, well, I'm trying to think what would be a good example. If you had a aperture that was 50 millimeters wide, and you had a focal length that was 100 millimeters long, 100 divided by 50 would be 2, right? So you would have an f-stop of 2. So that'd be not a bad f-stop actually. So when you have a lower f-stop, you're drinking in more light. When you have a higher, you're drinking in less light. Now, there are benefits to this. You might say, well, why wouldn't we just want everything to be a high f-stop, right? Because you're drinking the most light and that's what you want. Well, sometimes, first off, you can have too much light, and second off, the more light you drink in, the wider open your f-stop is, the narrower your focus gets. It can get so narrow that only this little thing right here is in focus, and everything behind it's out of focus, and everything in front of it is in focus. I like to do photography like that, actually, in reality. But when you're focusing the moon, you probably want to get a f-stop that's a little bit higher so that you can broaden that focus out a little bit. Otherwise, you'll have certain craters in focus and certain craters out of focus. What I recommend is play with your settings. Try 100, 200, maybe as high as 400, but adjust that f-stop and get that f-stop up a little bit. 8, 9, 10, that'll give you a nice broad, wide field of view. You'll be able to focus on a bunch of, not field of view, I'm sorry, depth of focus. That'll give you a nice wide depth of focus, which is really, really important. The third thing is to look at the speed of the shutter. This is 1/320th of a second. You're going to want to go as high as you can get away with. And when you hit the button to take the photo, it'll give you a little light meter here and tell you if you're anywhere near where you need to be. But it's easy just to look through if you have a button that lets you click it and see the actual image. We can't see the image because I just set the aperture so high that you can't do that. Let me reduce the aperture a little bit. Drop that aperture down. Just drop that down a little bit. Okay, there we go. See? Now it's actually overexposed. And you see you can adjust and play with, when you scroll the little bar here, you can adjust and play with the amount of time the shutter is going to remain open. If it's open for a longer period of time, you're going to get more light. If it's open for a shorter period of time, you're going to get less light. And you want it as fast as you can. And the reason is because the tripod is going to shake a little bit. You want a sturdy tripod, but you're still going to probably get some tripod shaking. And the moon itself is moving. You don't believe it until you look at it really closely with like a spotter scope, but the stupid thing's moving. So the faster you can get it, the better. So you adjust these 3 settings, and what you're trying to go for is the fastest shutter speed you can get, the lowest ISO you can get, and you probably want your aperture to be reasonably high. With these things combined, you will be able to get a good photo. Now, I'm going to set up the camera, and I'm going to narrate a little bit more of this. Alright, I recommend lowering, let me put my camera and everything down here. I recommend lowering the tripod as low as you can get away with, because the lower you get it to the ground, the less shaking you're going to get. And the shaking is a major problem. You may not seem it, but even after you hit the button to photograph or use a shutter release, which I recommend by the way, this is going to vibrate just a little bit. Like, you can't see it, but if you were zoomed in, really zoomed in, you'd be able to see it. It's there, trust me. Now what we can do is take our camera and we can hook up a lens to it. I'm going to start off with this 300mm zoom lens, because this is this is an extremely common zoom lens to find. 70, 80 millimeters to about 300. It's very, very common. You'll also find a couple that are around the 200 range. They're very, very common to find. By the way, good practice, always loop your arm around the cable. Now you screw on the adapter. Try not to get run over by cars going by. And plug the camera up. Now at this point, we can get into this and point ourselves up at the moon. Now, I'll show you some of the settings to use. Alright, so here we go. I've gotten this camera down lower where I can more easily see things. I have a shutter release right here, shutter release, and I'm going to plug this in. You can use a remote type or a cable type. Make sure your camera supports these before you go out and buy one, but most of them do. Most cameras support them. You might want to do something about this hanging down because it can catch the wind and make the camera tripod vibrate. And by the way, on a windy day, just don't do it. When I hit this button, it's not going to shake the tripod as much. Now, I'm going to zoom in, and let me give you a hint. When you're looking through the camera, adjust the camera to where it needs to be. Get it pointed reasonably close to center. Where am I turning? Here we go. There's the turn. Get it adjusted. Once you're right on dead on for the moon, then you want to slowly zoom in. The reason you do this is because otherwise you'll lose where the moon is. And that speeds things up a bit. I suggest using full manual focus. Now what you do is you focus as close as you can get to the moon. Many cameras have the ability to hit a button and see through the LCD screen. When you do this, you can hit another button that many cameras have that allows you to digitally zoom in. Now you're not actually going to be zoomed in like on the photograph, because good cameras don't use digital zoom, they use optical zoom, meaning the lens does the zooming. But once you've zoomed in with the digital zoom, it'll let you see the moon up close and you can focus in very, very carefully. Now let me hook the camera up so you can see what that looks like. Alright, so let's get this set up now. We're going to hit the button that lets me see the screen, and if you look closely, you might be able to see that there's a moon right there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the tripod and everything until the moon is right dead in the center. And then I'm going to zoom the lens in, not the auto zoom. By the way, did you notice that? As I zoomed in, the screen got darker. And the reason is because the f-stop's actually going up, meaning we're getting less light in because we're looking at a narrower and narrower space. So now we're about on there. I need to get a new tripod. Look how rickety that is. So we're zoomed into our maximum. At this point, we can hit a button that zooms digitally into this moon. See that? We've digitally zoomed into the moon. And we can use that to get our focus down nice and perfect. It's exactly what we want. We can then adjust the settings. So first up, you notice as I'm scrolling scroll bar, what I'm doing is let's zoom out a little bit, zoom in like that. As I scroll the scroll thing right here, what I'm doing, the scroll wheel, is I'm increasing or decreasing the shutter speed. So watch this. Increasing the shutter speed darkens the moon, but it also makes it look nice. You get all the beautiful features. If you slow it down a little bit so the shutter's open for a longer period of time, it gets wider and wider and wider and wider until it's just nothing but garbage. See? We don't want that. Alright, so let's get out of this mode for a second and get ourselves set for what we want to do. We want to give ourselves something like maybe an f-stop of 8, right? Nice and dark, so we'll get a nice wide field of view. Next thing we want to do is probably I'm going to put my ISO around 400, and the reason is because I've actually it's still daytime, so we'll put it at 200, but when it gets darker I'll probably put it at 400. The reason is with this higher f-stop and with the fast shutter speed and everything like that, with the slower shutter speed, I need to get a little bit more light in here if I can. Alright, so let's open this back up and look and see what we see. It's a different scene now, by the way. You notice. Oops. And let's adjust this so we can kind of see what's going on. It's darker. There. And we get the focus right. Alright, focus is pretty good. Now, one thing we can do if we want to make our life better is we can hit many cameras have the ability to adjust like self-timers and things. If you set a self-timer for 10 seconds, that will further help get rid of those jitters. But here's the thing, if you're going to focus the moon in the middle, make sure that you understand that during the 10 seconds that this thing's counting down, the moon is going to continue to move. In fact, let's zoom in and see the moon moving. If you watch extremely carefully, you can see it slightly moving across the screen. See it? It's definitely going. So anyway, now that we think we're about set and pretty much ready to go, we have a shutter speed that we like. See, it's not even centered anymore. So I kind of want to get up just a little bit ahead of it so that it moves into place. We got the shutter speed set the way we want. In this case, it's going to be 800th of a second. We have an f-stop of 8, and we have an ISO of 200. So let's take a photograph and see what we get. I've started the photograph. 6 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, boom. Now, hit the playback button and let's see what we got. Now this needs a little bit of photo manipulation to look good, by the way. But this is not bad, right? This isn't bad. You can see craters, you can see details. It'll be much better at night. Now, the best thing you can do and is catch a airplane flying through it. And there's actually an airplane going along right now, but it's not near the moon, unfortunately. If you catch an airplane going through it, that looks really great. Okay, so we're going to hook a bigger zoom lens on now and see what we can do. Alright, so as you can see, I have a much bigger zoom lens at this point. This isn't a zoom lens, I'm sorry, it's telephoto because it doesn't zoom, it stays a fixed focal length. It's called a prime lens, by the way, when it has a fixed focal length. This guy is a 500mm focal length, which is 200mm greater than my other zoom lens, which is pretty good by itself. But it has this 2x adapter. That means that whatever this is, it's doubled. Now, what does that mean? Well, first off, it means that a 500mm becomes 1000mm, which sounds wonderful. You know, double the magnification, 1000mm. But it also means that the f-stop of f8 is now f16. This is really dark. The moon's really bright, so we might still get something. So let's hook this bad boy up and see what we can get. All right, make sure it's all good and tight, because this thing's heavy now. And these are cheap, by the way. A lens like this goes for about $100. You can buy thousands of dollars worth of lenses that'll do a much better job. But for $100, I actually have been using this lens right here for over 15 years, this guy, and it's still in good shape as far as I can tell. Now, you notice right off the bat you don't see anything. The reason is not because the lens cap is on or anything, it's because it's too dark. So let's go and adjust the settings so we can see something. Let's go up to 800 ISO. That's kind of high, but it'll work. Let's lower that shutter speed down to maybe 160th of a second. And we can't mess with the aperture on this one, the f-stop, because this guy doesn't have an automatic f-stop like the other lens. Actually, there's a ring up on the top that I would adjust and turn to set the f-stop to whatever I want. But I'm going to leave it at f8 because with this 2x adapter, you know it's f16. So let's switch back and see if we can see something. Okay, the sky's a bit better now, right? Now, let me see if I can try to find the moon with this crazy thing. All right, moon, 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 moon. All right, there's the moon. Let me get adjusted onto the moon. And that's going to be a bit of a pain. All right, come on, moon. This thing, the problem, of course, also is the tripod isn't the best. So getting this to work right is difficult to say the least. Now we'll adjust the focus. The moon is going up, so what that means is that if I get this below the moon, it'll eventually show up. By the way, the moon will eventually wander its way into my field of view. All right, so we're set correctly. Let's zoom in. By the way, I usually prefer doing this when it's darker, but I can't show you anything if it's too dark. And, oops. All right, we're pretty much focused. Trust me, you probably can't see it, but we are. And we're gonna darken this up a little bit. 400th of a second. That looks good. 100th of a second. Maybe, yeah, about 400th of a second. And do you notice? Watch this. Look at it move. Even if I hit the button, it'll just keep moving and moving and moving and moving and moving. That's the reason you use a shutter release. So let's get a photo of the moon. All right? I'll put these in the video, by the way, too. Here it goes. It's like ducks or something over there. Not bad. Not bad. This isn't a very good lens. That's what you get from it. But it's not bad. And as you can see, you get a lot more of the moon this time. You get more real estate with a lens like this. Now let's hook this sucker up to a telescope and see what we get. Alright, so I have an Orion telescope right here. Let's pull this guy out. I don't usually like to do this in the middle of the dirt, but it's the best way to do it in this case. We're going to use this guy to hook everything up. Alright, now, for starters, here's a 500mm lens, by the way, too. I took the extender off the end. If you're going to play around in the dirt like I'm doing, you need to be really careful that you don't get a bunch of dirt in your stuff. I don't normally suggest this. I usually suggest if you're going to do this and you're going to be outside, buy like a doormat or something and put that on the ground, because you can kneel on a doormat and it keeps your legs clean, keeps you from getting like grass in your pants, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, what we can do is this. You can take a telescope like this, and this is a good telescope. I mean, I know it's like $150 telescope, but for what it is a good telescope. There are, you know, tens of thousands of dollars worth of telescopes. That's kind of a relative term what a good one is. For the money, this is a good scope. And you can screw this right on the end of it, and then you can connect it directly to the camera. That's it, done. That was it. That's all you have to do. $20 ring, screws right on. That's it. You buy it on the Amazon.com, something like that. Now, I'm going to go a little bit further than this. I'm going to screw the 2x adapter onto the end of this. Why? Because now this 400 millimeter telescope, and this is the equivalent of a 400 millimeter lens, by the way, but an f-stop of 5 because the opening is so wide. Let's drinks in all that light. So when I put this 2x adapter in the end, this is going to become an 800 millimeter. Remember, everything doubles, but the difference is the f-stop's only going to double to 10, not 16. So I'll be able to drink a lot more light in, get a nice wide open, good field of view. It's going to look great. All right, so screw this on tightly, get it all tight. Now, let's hook this up to the camera. Make sure I don't have any dust in it because I'm sitting here playing with the thing in the dirt like an idiot. By the way, don't do that. Never play with the stuff in the dirt like I'm doing. I'm doing this for you guys because I love you guys. I have to do this. By the way, you can adjust the screws here so that this doesn't hook upside down the way this one's doing. You can do that and turn it. I didn't do that because I have it like hooked and configured for other stuff. By the way, if you do this, you now also have a large telephoto lens too. Keep that in mind. If you want to photograph animals, we should go out and photograph animals sometime, and I'll show you guys what I get. So let's hook this guy up to the mount, and let's see if we can get some photos of the moon. Alright, so as you can see here, I've got the entire telescope all the way down here connected to the camera. And the camera, like I said before, is upside down, but we could fix that if we just unscrewed the ring here and made a few modifications. So this is the focuser. You adjust this in and out to focus the lens. It's kind of like when you spin the lens around on a camera, what it does is it moves the focal length in and out. And the same thing's happening here. You just adjust this little rack, what is it called, a rack and pinion, I think, and a focuser, and it will focus for you. When you get the moon in focus, you can adjust this little screw here, which will lock this in place so it doesn't slide out due to the weight of the camera, because the camera's heavy. All right, now let's look and see what we have going on here. Let's bring the moon into focus. I've pretty much gotten the moon already just about where it needs to be. So we're gonna unscrew the focus here. It's just standard focuser. You're just turning a focuser with your hands like this. In fact, let me show you. I am adjusting the focus right here. See, adjusting the focus. And when the focus is good, I can screw the screw and locking it in place. See, good telescope. All right, so cheaper ones that you buy at the store, those crappy ones you buy at the store, like department store scopes, they don't do stuff like that. All right, so let's bring the moon into focus. Focus, 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 focus. Now, when we think we have the moon about in focus, we'll click that button again and we'll zoom in and we'll bring it more into focus. And it's hard to see it right now because the settings aren't good. So let's adjust the settings first. For starters, we're getting way too much light in. We want to speed the sucker up. So let's increase to 800th of a second. Let me get out of zoom for a minute so you can see. 800th of a second. 1250. See, we can go to a much higher shutter speed at this point, and the reason we can go to higher shutter speed is because we have a lens that takes in so much more light. Okay, so we're going to go 1600th of a second. All right, that'll be good. Now we're going to zoom in, zoom, 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 and now that we're in zoomed in, we're going to try to like adjust. Look how much it moves. God, it's a pain in the butt to get this right. We have to focus. Focus. Oh my God. Lose my mind doing this. Oh my God, focus, 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 focus. Okay, that's about right. All right, so bounce, bounce, bounce. Look at it go all over the place. So there's the moon. And let's deal with the fact that the moon is slowly going up. Get it nice and centered. The moon will be coming now into our field of view. See how it's rising slowly? Well, anyway, the moon is there. The photograph will look good. We can zoom in on the moon. And when we zoom in on the moon, let's zoom out. When you zoom in on the moon, you can see all the craters, which I'll show you the photographs in a minute. Once you see the craters and they all look like they're in focus and you've got them in focus, you go ahead, hit the button, take a photo, just like before. Oops. Now, the settings I'm using are 1600 of a second for the shutter, an ISO of 800, and I have the ISO cranked up so I can get it in some light. And the f-stop on this is fixed at an f-stop of 10 because I have the 2x adapter on the end of it. And the moon photos I'm getting are looking pretty good. And that's pretty much the secret to getting it. You want it to be stable, and you want that wide depth of field, which means you want a higher f-stop, and then you'll get a good moon photo. The other thing you need, one of the most important things in the entire world, is you need a clear, dark sky. Without a clear, dark sky, you have nothing. And I mean zip, zoodah, nothing. So this has been Tom from anti-proton.com, and here's some moon photos.